In today's video, I want to talk to you guys about my experience with this lonely chapter and being this lone wolf, and why I really don't think it's the way for us to level up as men and become that better version of ourselves. Little over 10 years ago, I moved from being that guy who just enjoyed partying, smoking cigarettes every day, smoking weed every night, and getting fucked up on the weekends. I was fitting in with the crowd that I thought were my people, but I got to the point where I realized that it just wasn't my fit and I wasn't being true to who I really was and who I could potentially be. However, over the past 10 years, I made a massive transformation from who I was to who I am now. So I want to talk a little bit more about what that journey was like and how alone that did feel at times. But to be honest, it was in my own doing. I put myself in that position. And I think because it is Mental Health Month, it is more than called for to be talking about this at this point in time. And also given the fact that depression and loneliness are some of the biggest killers of men, and they stop us from living that quality of life that we would all love to have. So I believe it was first Alex Hormozy and then Chris Williamson who brought to light this concept of the lonely chapter, where you shift from point A to point B in your life. Maybe this is moving from being stuck in a dead-end job making little money to then starting your own business or multiple businesses and making 6 or 7 figures. Or maybe it's moving from an unhealthy lifestyle, an unhealthy relationship and friend group, moving into a life that is more active, is more aligned with your values, and you're looking after your health, you're exercising, you're looking after your nutrition, getting enough sleep, and just taking into account all the things that you need to do for not only your physical, but also your mental health. And whatever journeys there are in between, we have this point A to point B, the start, not necessarily to the end, but to the now, where you are now, or maybe where you are aiming for. Now, it's conceived that along this journey, you have to do this alone, that you have to isolate yourself. And I don't necessarily think that is the case. And whilst I would agree that there is so much value in working in solitude, getting comfortable with yourself and not feeling like you have to be dependent on other people, I think to let the pendulum swing completely one way just isn't the optimal way to approach your best performance as a man, whether it be in your career, studies, training, also working on your relationships with your friends, family, and finding that partner that you can live the rest of your life with. I don't think it is the way to approach that, whilst also looking after your mental well-being and finding this balance that works for you. I think the optimal way of doing it is finding the people on that same journey, because I can guarantee there are plenty of men out there. Not only are there plenty of lonely men who may or may not be in the same boat or the same train of thought, but there's also going to be a lot of lonely men who are thinking in the same way as you, who have the same challenges as you, who have left the partner, they've left the friend group, they've left the unhealthy lifestyle, and they've started to take leaps and bounds to becoming that better version of themselves as a man, for whatever reasons that it may be, and they feel a little lost on that journey. So when it came to my own journey, I literally winded up leaving my relationship and most of the people in my friend group at the time. Prior to becoming a personal trainer, nearly 10 years ago, I moved from smoking nearly a pack of cigarettes daily, drinking every weekend, smoking weed every night, and occasionally doing harder drugs, to training every day, doing strength training, Muay Thai, and a little bit of running. And it obviously progressed over the years, having dipped my toes in the water in a few little competitions here and there, and more recently, really stepping into my running era. Now, in that time earlier on, there definitely was an experience with this lonely chapter of finding my new people. Luckily enough, getting into the fitness industry, it was easy to find people in that career who were working on themselves, who were working on their own personal development. And this is probably where I got my first taste of meeting the right people and getting into the right environment that helped me to develop myself as a person, both professionally and personally. Now, it wasn't just that, but I did spend my own time when I was in isolation, researching, studying, looking at things, consuming content that helped me to evolve and change my perspective a little bit more. However, if I could change anything in the past 10 years, I would definitely dial the amount of time that I spent doing that back a lot more. I don't necessarily regret all the time that I spent on my own, because I think there was a lot of value to it, and I learned a lot about myself, and I got more comfortable being myself and being myself around other people. However, there was a lot of times where I was actually just uncomfortable to put myself out there out of a fear of rejection, being rejected from the girl or the group of friends, and just having trust issues that lingered from past experiences in relationships. And this is one of the big flaws that I see with this whole lone wolf mentality, which I used to idolize and I used to wear with pride. I used to tell myself that I was strong and I was tough because I didn't need other people. But I think what really sits under that for most men is the fear that they will be rejected and they will be abandoned by people if they let them into their life. And that is because they truly just want to be connected. They want to be loved. A lot of men feel like they need power, but I think they just need connection. They just want to be appreciated, as much as they call it just being respected. They want to be appreciated because that was missing at some point in their life, and that was probably earlier on when they were a child and they were missing that from a parent or a sibling or influential figures in their upbringing. So why I bring this up is because it's a recurring theme that I see in some of the people or some of the men that I've trained with, worked with over the past 9 to 10 years. I see it in myself. I saw it in myself in the past, but obviously still to this day I can notice it at times when my fear of being vulnerable or letting someone in actually stems from a fear of being rejected or abandoned. And while I don't feel compelled to fully tell you where that stems from, I do know it comes from my childhood and feelings of abandonment and not being appreciated or loved then. And for you, the guy watching this video today, if you want to start to do work on that, there's plenty of routes to take. You can learn more by watching more and listening to more, but you can have more conversations with like-minded people as you start to meet these other guys, as you start to enter some of these communities where these sort of discussions are being had. You're going to learn from other people's experiences that will probably mirror your own. That's where you'll get a real deep understanding. Not only that, you're going to get a sense of belonging and appreciation. You're not going to feel so alienated and isolated because people have been going through the same shit that you have, and that's going to make you feel a little bit more whole, not so lost, and give you a bit more confidence in your direction as leveling up as a guy, and knowing that there's people around you who are sharing or have shared those similar challenges. If you can take away anything from this video today, if you do feel like you're the lone wolf, you're living through the lonely chapter, through my own experience, all I can recommend is that you look for a community, is that you have conversations with people around you. Maybe there are people who are in your circle currently or in your past circle who may have been a good friend, but you never talked about this sort of thing. And then you can strike up that conversation with a warm body, and then that can lead you to working on these things together and sharing that relatability. However, if you don't have that, that's where I definitely recommend seeking out communities, whether it is online or in person, so you can discuss these things. And when it comes to your own personal and professional development, you can actually work with other men who are in a similar mindset. We're going to work better as a team. You are going to be stronger when you have got support. That's how we were meant to work together. And it doesn't mean at times that you can't work on your own, and it doesn't mean that you shouldn't find your own solitude and spend time with yourself and take time to reflect and take a break from society at times, but don't live in that world. The other thing is, if you can't find your own community, why don't you build one? This is what I started doing last year when I built the Daily Discomfort Run Club. I'd had this idea for the Daily Discomfort for years, but I never ran with it because I just had so much fear around it. And to be honest, I think I had to experience a lot first before I really got to the point where I saw the need for not only men needing this community, but myself needing this community too. To create this space, to create this environment for guys to be able to share what's going on in their life, share their challenges, but also be empowered. Because don't get me wrong, it's not just about opening up about your feelings and talking about your emotions all the time. It's also pushing each other. It's also challenging each other to become better. For us, that means getting better at running, or maybe pushing ourselves in the gym, or stepping up in our career, studies, whatever it may be, or even just challenging our own perspectives at times. Through hearing other people's experiences, like we said, it's relatable, but also hearing it can shift your own perspective on how you approach your life. When you respect the people around you, you're going to be more agreeable to some of their perspectives. And this is why you actually want to find a respectable group of guys to get around who respect you, so you can start to have that openness to shifting your perspective if that's what needs to be done to get you out of this lonely hole and get you on with your life. A final point that I do want to comment on here that is very true is that there's a lot of guys out there with shitty morals. There's a lot of guys out there that you can't trust. But there's also those dime in a dozen who, once they network together into a group, create a really powerful community. It creates a space for guys that you can really trust. On the same note, you want to find a community where you can call people out, and you've got to be open to being called out as well. So when you drop your standards, you don't just judge each other and push each other away, you help each other to raise each other's standards and become better men. One final point that I want to bring into this, and something that I've seen in some lonelier men in the past, is that they start to make things a little too much about themselves. Don't get me wrong, you want to be able to open up, share your challenges, what you're going through and your experiences, but if you constantly start to talk to people about yourself all the time and make it all about you, no one's going to want to spend time with you. You've got to be interested in other people. You've got to be compassionate for other people. You've got to show empathy and understanding and be genuinely interested or curious about these other people that you're going to meet. That's just something that I've seen in the past, and probably that I've seen glimpses in myself when I get too excited talking about things. It's got to be a two-way street. You've got to be open to have mutual conversations in communities to keep those friendships and build those brotherhoods. I'm sure this isn't the only time that I'm going to talk about this topic today, but I hope this reached someone who needed to hear it. Maybe you're feeling a little bit lost at this point in your life. Maybe you're a little bit angry with my opinion, but if it challenges your own and can shift your perspective and can get you to lean into building that community around yourself or creating your own, then I guess the job's done. I think we'll definitely be discussing this one again in future. I'd love to hear your opinions as usual, so comment them below. Let me know what you think, and otherwise guys, I'll see you next time.